We made it.
Good evening. We made it. We're here. We have a special treat tonight for our listeners, right?
Yes. And I promise this week I won't sound like I'm running through tinfoil.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm kind of depressed because we have come to find out that it's either my iPad or it might be my microphone, which is a pretty expensive microphone. So
Right.
iPads are not cheap either. So I'm like
No,
trying not to cry.
nothing is cheap when it comes to technology. It's always dreadful
No,
to have an issue like that. So
no.
bittersweet. We figured out the problem, but
Yeah.
it's gonna come at a cost.
Because I don't think my Apple Care is
uh,
valid. I think it's past time.
it's always the way.
But we've made it to the end of February.
Yes, we're here. We made it. We're gonna
This is
wrap
the
up.
last For the Love of Paul Part 2. Sorry. Still a little
Gag.
bitter about the whole Valentine's thing. Oh, but I have to say, my antique looking roses, they kind of died a little sooner than I wanted to, but some of those red roses that I had on the table last week,
Still looking good. All right.
still looking pretty darn good.
All
There's two
right.
that are I might have to take them
The
outside
worst
and
for
let them.
wear.
Yeah, yeah. But the rest of them still look pretty darn good. So I was like, all
Great.
right, there we go. Well, enough talk of roses and failing technology. Let's go ahead and get this started. Let's do
On with
this.
it.
On with it.
The sky, it's dark, and the wind is blowing. Come inside. Sit down with a cup of tea while we tell you a little story. A story that lies beyond the oblong box. With your hosts, Levi Leland and Virginia Poe.
Sips tea.
I do. Tonight I am drinking this beautiful mint from the wonderful Witchwood Tea House here in my area, and they are very lovely folks. Nice little collective they have, and their teas are fantastic, and the mint is superb. So that's what I'm doing tonight.
Great. Mint is always good for a nice soothing
Yes.
evening, and it helps kind of, I don't know, warm up the vocals, right? A little bit, stimulate the
Actually,
vocals
yes.
for a recitation.
Oh gosh. Yes. But I'm also having really bad allergy issues the last couple of days.
Oof, that's
Today has
never fun.
like I can't eat, like I don't have my regular contacts in because my eyes were like, no, we're not doing this today. And I'm like, oh man. So it is tonight. So I apologize for the glare on my lenses here, but
What are you gonna do? Right.
Yeah, yeah. And of course it's a little chilly here where we are. We got flurries today. And of course we have Mr. Elliot. Oh, you don't want to, oh buddy. I woke him from his sleep.
Uh-oh.
He's on my lap. He's been on my lap since you and I got on and figured out, okay, we'll put you back down. I thought you wanted to say hi to your adoring fans. There he is. Look at this sad little baby. Oh. Put him back down on my lap and he'll go back to sleep.
Let's hope.
Oh no, he will.
For your sake.
He's already laying back down. He is hunkered back down and assuming position.
Well, I myself am going over a little bit of a thing, a bug, a head cold, whatever, and so we're both in pretty rough shape tonight. But we're still
I think
gonna
we're stellar.
we're still gonna power through and treat everybody to a recitation of The Raven that we are
Yes.
going to read.
This is
together.
how we're closing out For the Love of Poe 2
Yes.
in our episode that we are calling All Lovers Lost.
Yes. The Raven is
Because
is
great
kind
example.
it's the prime example of a lost love, or poem about a lost love by Poe. It's kind of the pillar of of lost love poems in his collected works. And it's interesting. It's always fun to hear different people recite this poem because the interpretations are always so different. You know, some people like to put a little bit more emphasis on certain words than others, and you know, some people kind of find a different climax to the poem while they recite it. Like, it's interesting to hear different recitations, you know, different perspectives of the poem, because it can give an overall, I don't know, different energy to it in a way, you know. So should be interesting. And so this poem was published in 1845, correct?
Yes, correct.
It was published in New York, and he was living in New York at that time. And it was published in the New York Evening Mirror in January of that year. And it pretty much made Poe an instant success. I mean,
it put him like in everyone's vision. They were suddenly aware.
Right. If for those who hadn't heard of Poe yet, they
knew who he was now.
they knew him then. So yeah, Poe was slowly carving out that place for himself in literature. Well, mainly criticism, but you know, also literature, you know, stories and poems.
Sure.
So people have heard, you know, had heard of him, but this poem made sure that that those who didn't had at this point had heard of him. So yeah, it's a staple, right?
It is oh yeah.
It's a
and
staple.
I mean, it's the one, I would say, of all of his poems, if you say his name, you're going to hear two people, or you're going to hear a person say one of two things. They're either going to say The Raven, or they're going to say Annabelle Lee.
Yeah.
You know, that's just how it goes.
Those just seem to be the I don't want to say one hit wonders, two hit wonders of Poe's repertoire. You know, those are the ones that people read. You know,
they're both very epic.
Yes, yeah,
and they've been interpreted a lot.
Right.
By musicians, and you've got actors that do oral interpretations. Oh my goodness, the amount of animated
little features,
you know, oh my gosh,
films,
there's so many. You can go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, there are a ton of interpretations of this.
I did not realize how many animated shorts there are of like a visual version of The Raven while it's being recited. You know, and it's neat to see all these different, like, it doesn't get boring. It doesn't get old, because it's just.
And Poe, his whole point to this poem, now I've heard different takes on it as far as what people think of it. And, you know, some people say it's not really much of a poem. It's more of like a prose type piece, or it's you know, but it's perfectly constructed. Poe had thought about every detail. Every word in this poem was carefully selected by
It's
Poe and
yes,
written.
it all has intent and purpose.
Yes, and
Yep.
the alliteration and
Mhm.
the mood, and Poe, of course, intended this poem to be read aloud when he wrote it.
Mhm.
He wrote it in such a way that the person reciting it sounded sad as the poem was sad. So in this poem you have a lot of long O sounds. Lenore being the main lost love, the main subject of this narrator's grieving, and of
Mhm.
course the ravens reply to the
Mhm.
narrator, nevermore. So there's these
Mhm.
long O sounds that make it sound dreary. So it's a
Mhm.
dreary subject matter, and it's a dreary poem, and it literally sounds dreary as you are reciting it. I mean, that's Poe
Right.
had all in mind when he wrote not just The Raven, but a lot of his works. He kept all
Sure.
these things in mind. But The Raven is just a prime example of all those things,
Mhm.
accumulated together. And it's really
Absolutely.
just amazing. So,
Oh, absolutely. Fun fact about moi, when I was in high school, I had auditioned, tried out for our forensics team, and I was going to be doing dramatic interpretation, and so I chose to do Tennyson's The Lady of Shalott because, as I've stated before, I consider myself part of the Pre-Raphaelite sisterhood. Um, and I did not get chosen. Very sad and upset.
shucks.
I went home and I was really upset. And my dad looked at me and he goes, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I don't understand." And he's like, "What?" He was very confused as to what I was upset about. And I told him, I said, "I auditioned for the forensics team today." He goes, "Oh, what category did you go under? I'm sure you got in, right?" And I'm like, "No, no, I didn't." And he goes,
No.
"What?" And I'm like, "What did you read?" And so I told him, and he's like, "That's a hard one. You probably should have read The Raven. You would have gotten right in." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Why did I not even?" I was so upset with myself after that, and I was like, "Never
Dad
again."
knows best.
Damn, damn,
Yep.
he's right.
Yep.
You know?
As much as you probably hated to
None of us
admit it, you're
often
like, "Ah."
write about things. Oh, no, no, no.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I, I put it out there
You weren't
for
a
you.
rebellious one. You accepted the fact that,
mean, I had my moments, but
Right.
but yeah, when I look back, I'm like, yeah, he was right about that. That was definitely one of those things that I was very, very sad about. Had I just read The Raven,
Right. Well, now's your opportunity. Redeem yourself tonight.
because that's what we're going to be doing next.
Right. Who shall
I'm gonna have to.
who shall start?
Would you
I'm
like to start?
Should we flip a coin?
Because I'm not. No, I'll start because I'm not on my usual microphone. You can't hear his little
Oh,
fuzzy
it's
face.
not as
He's snoring.
he's snoring through. We're already boring him. What does that tell you?
Our own producers are bored by
They're
us.
bored. They're gonna chop us.
Actually, the other two producers are curled up underneath of my grandparents' antique settee over here.
Well, that's a good spot
But
for
that's where the heat vent is, so they're not dummies.
them. Right.
Oh, okay. So we're gonna do this. Let's hope I can actually see the pages because it's a little dark over here tonight for some reason. All right. This is The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, and of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. 'Tis some visitor, I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more.
Ah, distinctly, I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my book surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore.
And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terror never felt before. So that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. 'Tis this and nothing more."
Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. Sir, said I, or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there, and nothing more.
Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortals ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." 'Tis I whispered, and an echo muttered back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more.
Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see what then thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more.
Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mane of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon the bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more.
Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore.
Much I marvelled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly. Through its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore.
But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther then he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore.
Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, "Doubtless," said I, "what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmercifully disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of never, nevermore."
But the raven, still beguiling all my sad fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled the cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then, upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore.
This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloated o'er, she shall press, nevermore.
Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore.
Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, whether tempest sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted on this desert land enchanted, on this home of horrid haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore.
Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels named Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore.
Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my chamber door. Take thy beak from out my heart and take that form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore.
And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. And that is the raven.
That is the raven. All right. So that poem.
That poem. That's a mouthful, right? Yeah.
And if people think that we don't have a blooper reel and a half from that, you're wrong. Yes.
The blooper reel, we got to release the blooper reel for April Fools. That would be a good idea. Let's do that.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. And then our actual recording that we're doing on April 1st will be the following week episode. And then the week after that will be the other episode.
Right. So that would be good. Maybe we can promise that. We'll call that episode the April Fools.
Yes. The April Fools. Yes. So
that damn bird. And there's my clock. See, it's been rushing us. My clock was rushing us all through that whole poem.
Faster.
Maybe you guys didn't hear it after all the edits, but we heard it.
We hear it.
That clock, between Elliot and the clock, we are being terribly judged through this whole episode.
Oh, yes. So, talking about the raven.
It's so moody.
It is. One of the things that I've always kind of wondered, and actually, this was a topic of discussion from our lovely friends over at the 6 Degrees of Poe podcast. They had for their Unplugged in January, they covered the Raven, and talking about wondering at the end of the poem if we thought that the narrator was alive or if the narrator was passed on. And that's it's you could read it both ways. You could read that
Right.
both ways, that he, you know, he dies, or he is still very much alive, alone with that bird
Right.
hanging out on top of Athena's head.
Right.
You know? So there is that. There's also something that in listening to an analyzation of the poem, and I touched with you on this briefly, but um, talking about, and it was a stanza actually that I read, talking about how she shall never press
On that cushion.
on that cushion. So is he
Yeah.
talking about her sitting in the seat? And I never noticed that before. And I was like,
Right. And you brought that to my attention too,
whoa.
and I
Yeah.
really hadn't
I hadn't thought about it
put
like
too
that.
much I hadn't put too
Hmm.
much stock into that line. I kind of just it wasn't one of those lines that stood out to me, so I never really
No.
thought too deeply into it. But after you had said that and after thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
it almost sounds a little silly. Like the narrator is like, "Ah, she'll never press her butt into the seat anymore." And it's like, but when you think about it
She must
more
have had a nice
profoundly,
backside.
yeah, exactly. That's what Poe was talking about. He's like, she had a nice caboose, like, you know, she had a great. Never mind. You can't get me going. I'll say something.
we are we know.
But on a more serious note, when you grieve somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that
You
do
think
cross your
about
mind.
that. Mm-hmm.
The littlest things,
Yep.
if you lose someone and you see a coffee mug that they used to drink out of,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
they'll never drink out of that coffee mug again. You
Mm-hmm.
look around at things that you would associate with them, just that really don't mean much of anything, but when they're gone and when you're grieving, that's
Mm-hmm.
all you think about. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
definitely what Poe is trying to do there, was just
Mm-hmm.
tell you how much grief this narrator is going through, and
Mm-hmm.
so the narrator is thinking to himself as he's just pulling a random seat out to sit in front of the raven, that she'll never sit in this chair again. Here I
Mm-hmm.
am sitting in this cushion, on this cushion, and she'll never sit in this cushion again, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just it's like it's very poignant, um but silly on a surface level, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it shows you Poe's aim, what he every line that he wrote, especially in this poem, mattered. It was never
Yes.
just let me write something just to fill the page. Like, no,
Correct.
every line, every word was perfectly curated by Poe, in
Right.
everything that he wrote. And
Exactly.
um, and with the symbolism in the raven, you have the raven, of course, an emblem of death and loss,
And wisdom.
and
And
wisdom. The
wisdom.
raven coming
Oh
in,
yes.
and that's where I was getting at. Coming in and
Mm-hmm.
perching on a bust of Pallas, Pallas Athena, the goddess of wisdom.
Wisdom.
So you have the raven lurking over
Mm-hmm.
wisdom, and it's kind of it's that telling of
Mm-hmm.
grief over thought, and how grief
Correct.
overpowers thought, and it's
Right.
um and then you think, so not only did Poe have that metaphorical symbolism and contrast in the poem,
Mm-hmm.
but physically. So he's writing a
Sure.
stark black raven perching on a pallid white bust of Pallas. You have that black and white,
Yes.
it's everything in that poem was just,
The will he, won't he? Like,
yes,
will he get to be with his love again? Will
right,
he not get to be with his love again?
right. So
Will he
as
live? Will he die?
Yeah. So it's just the metaphors, the symbolism, and then of course just the aesthetic of the poem is perfect. And yeah, so it's just
Oh yeah.
of course that's why we associate Poe with the Raven still today. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's the number one. So
Right. Yeah. It's a fantastic poem. We did that on the fly, folks.
yeah,
We did not rehearse that.
right, that was unrehearsed. So
Totally unrehearsed.
take from
If
it what you will, people.
if we had rehearsed, I think we could have done
Right. I would have
very
been out of my
nice.
chair in the background with with a candle and a book.
Would
No.
have some music going.
Right. It would be really dramatic. You'd see me running back and forth on my screen, just
Oh yeah. Oh
going
yeah.
nuts. I would have
thrown feathers everywhere.
Yeah, it would have been really yeah. Well, we'll do that when we really lose our minds. That's what we will do for sure. We haven't lost our minds quite yet. We're getting
Not yet.
but-
We're close.
right. Stay tuned.
Bear with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, stay tuned next week.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Before we end, can I tell them what we're doing next month?
Do it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. All right. So we have another series that is going to be a continuing series, but March is halfway to Halloween. So we are going to be doing a little series that I am calling The Price of Poe. So we will be talking about, obviously, we're going to be talking about Vincent Price and of course his connection to Eddie. And we're going to be discussing at least 3 of the Vincent Price Poe movies, kind of breaking them on down, sort of.
Yeah, we'll have to
compare
pick
and contrast.
Right, and we'll have to pick.
I already know which ones we're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I know we talked about it.
I won't announce that yet.
Yeah, I know we talked about
yet.
it. I don't want to spoil things, but yeah. So.
Yeah, because there's other things happening that are revolving around that too, and we can't
Right.
But it's very exciting.
Right.
So March is going to be our halfway to Halloween. Hooray! Yay! That warms my heart so much I can't even tell you. And we're going to be covering Vincent Price next month, who is someone very near and dear to my heart. One of the main reasons I got into acting in the first place, because I just wanted to star in a film with him. Never happened, but it was a goal.
In spirit.
Yes.
He can be with you in spirit.
Yes. I mean, hey, I have stood where he once stood, so that's good enough for me. But yeah, so we're going to do that next week. And then, of course, anyone who's in the Baltimore area or who just likes to go to steampunk festivals, yours truly will be at the Telltale Steampunk Festival in Hunt Valley, Maryland, April 1st and April 2nd. And we will be doing our live audience recording from 4:30 to 5:30. It will be in the main ballroom. Yeah.
Cool.
So that's going to be fun. Trying to work out logistics of, the media setup.
We'll get there.
Hopefully our producers will have a solution for us at that point. All right.
That's great.
Everyone, thank you for bearing with us tonight.
Yes, we really appreciate it.
And at least the audio is good this week.
Yeah. Plus, look at the pros, ignore the cons.
Yes. Look at the positive, ignore the negative. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
So until next week, Patreon. We would like to keep doing this show. So please think about supporting us, or just at least leaving us a review on Spotify or iTunes would be lovely.
Yes.
Yes. So next week we start the Ookie Spooky. All right.
Alrighty.
Have a good night, everyone. Bye.
You've been listening to Beyond the Oblong Box with your hosts, Levi Leland and Virginia Poe. Produced by EGL Brothers Limited, with production assistance from Peter D. Come rest in this bosom, arranged and performed by the Ninth Heaven. You can find us online on Facebook at BTOB Podcast. You can also find us on Instagram at Beyond the Oblong Box. And you can also reach us by email at btob1847@gmail.com. Please support our podcast by visiting us on our YouTube channel or any of your preferred podcast platforms.